From the New York Times, it's The Headlines. I'm Tracy Mumford. Today's Tuesday, June 2nd. Here's what we're covering.
I've been covering drought in the West for more than 10 years, and this is probably the worst I've ever seen it. The winter basically just didn't happen in a lot of the Rocky Mountains. The snow never really came, and that has basically left the mountains that should be covered in snow right now bare. And that's really scary to see at the beginning of what is expected to be a really hot summer.
My colleague Jack Healy is reporting on how the western United States is bracing for the water to run out. June has barely started, but 70% of the West is already in drought. Cities are restricting water use, and Jack says some farmers are abandoning their fields.
Colorado, in particular, is famous for its peaches. Its peaches are maybe the best part of a Colorado summer. They're unbelievably sweet and juicy. But right now, some of the peach farmers don't have enough water for their own trees. So what they're doing is they're ripping up some of their own orchards so they can take what little water they have and focus it on keeping some of their most productive trees alive. I talked to corn and bean farmers who are basically letting half of their fields go unplanted this year because they don't have enough water. I talked to farmers who are selling off parts of their livestock herds because they don't have enough grass to actually keep those cows fed.
Jack says it's not just farms. The little town of Kearney, Arizona, for example, is on the brink of running out of water. It has drained its public pool, banned people from watering their lawns or washing their cars, and let the Little League fields go brown. The mayor is now asking people to make sure they've worn their clothes 3 times before washing them. Jack says that for other towns in the West, a lot of which depend on the strained Colorado River for water, Kearney is a preview.
Big picture, the West is getting hotter, and the Colorado River that brings water to 40 million people and 5 million acres of farmland is shrinking. And I just think that this year we're at the kind of crisis point that the West has been dreading for decades. And without some pretty drastic action and deep cuts and, hopefully, some pretty torrential summer monsoon rains, the problem is only going to get worse.
Now, a few updates on the Trump administration, starting with the president's $1.8 billion fund. The Times has learned that, at least for now, Trump is backing off his plans for that pot of money, which would have likely distributed huge sums to his allies. The fund faced a pair of legal setbacks yesterday, but even before that, people familiar with the matter said Trump had spent days leaning towards scrapping the plan after it generated extraordinary bipartisan anger, including from some Republican senators. Still, Trump could change his mind, and some Republicans signaled yesterday that they were wary he might eventually push forward again with the controversial fund. Also, at the Pentagon, in a highly unusual decision, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has blocked the promotions of 9 Navy officers in a move that appears to be part of his campaign to purge the Pentagon of leaders he's called woke. He pulled 3 women and 2 black men off the planned promotion list, as well as 4 white men, leaving a slate that has no women and appears to only include 2 non-white officers. He made a similar move earlier this year, blocking the promotion of several Army officers, 2 black men and 2 women. Hegseth's interventions seem to violate the rules governing a promotion system that's supposed to be apolitical and merit-based. The decisions could also reshape the military's top ranks for years to come, leaving it with leaders that do not reflect the racial or gender makeup of its broader forces. Hegseth has never publicly explained why he's blocked the promotions, and a Pentagon spokesman also declined to offer any explanation. And yesterday, President Trump leaned on Israel to de-escalate its military campaign in Lebanon after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu threatened to hit Hezbollah targets in the suburbs of Beirut, causing thousands of people to evacuate. Hours later, Netanyahu appeared to back off the threat, though this morning Israeli strikes in southern Lebanon have continued. Israel's campaign in Lebanon is facing increasing condemnation around the world At an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council yesterday, diplomats almost unanimously called for Israel to withdraw its forces. The only country that didn't join in was the United States. Today in California, it is primary day, and the big race to watch is the fight for governor. Who will be in charge of the largest state in the country? Under California's election system, the top two primary finishers, regardless of party, will face off in the general election in November. In the heavily blue state, that means it could be two Democrats facing off, or a Democrat and a Republican. Today's voting caps off what has been a rocky and unpredictable campaign. There were rumors at the start that huge names like former Vice President Kamala Harris might jump in. Then one of the most prominent candidates, former Congressman Eric Swalwell, dropped out after a flurry of sexual misconduct allegations. Now, things have narrowed down to just 3 leaders in the polls.
Do you want a California for corporations, or do you want a California for Californians?
There's Democrat Tom Steyer, the billionaire former hedge fund manager running on an affordability platform. He's promised to raise taxes on the ultra-wealthy, including himself, and has spent more than $200 million of his own money to fund his campaign. Next, also a Democrat, there's Javier Becerra.
I'm not the richest candidate in this race, and I may not be the slickest candidate in this race, but I know how to fight. And I know how to win.
The former health secretary under President Biden has presented himself as the candidate with experience. He's also served in Congress, the state legislature, and as California's attorney general. And then there's Republican Steve Hilton, who worked in British politics before coming to the U.S. and becoming a Fox News personality.
How do you see the state of the race?
Well, I think the starting point is that this state desperately needs change.
Hilton, who has the backing of President Trump, is a long shot for the general election, but he has managed to stay close to the Democratic frontrunners in the primary polls. As for the results, California has millions of mail-in ballots and tends to count slowly, so it could take a few days for the final outcome to be officially announced. And finally, back to dry weather and farming for a moment, but with some rays of hope. A few years ago, a fire was tearing through a forest in Spain and heading straight for an 800-year-old vineyard. But when the flames got close to it, a weird thing happened. The fire stopped. Experts have been looking at how certain types of landscapes, including vineyards, can help slow or even partly stop runaway forest fires. As fires like that have been getting more intense and catastrophic, researchers in Europe are promoting the idea that vineyards, as well as truffle farms and apiaries, aka beehives, can play a role in making places more fire resilient. With grapes, for example, there's space between the rows, meaning fire has to jump to continue. And with truffle and honey operations, farmers are managing forested areas that would otherwise grow wild, potentially becoming tinderboxes. A researcher who works with vineyards and other farms that adopt best practices for fire management told The Times, quote, "We are not only producing wine, we are producing security." Those are the headlines. Today on The Daily, an inside look at the SpaceX IPO, which could be the biggest ever on Wall Street. You can listen to that in the New York Times app or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Tracy Mumford. We'll be back tomorrow.